So a lot of people are talking about a property boom, but at the same time we're seeing headlines saying that right now is a buyer's market. So which one is it? Are we going to see prices surge again, or is this the calm before the storm as we see a correction? So today I'm going to be unpacking the truth behind record asking prices, rising supply, but also shifting sentiment, and what it all means for sellers, buyers and investors. Make sure you stick around because I'm also going to break down as to where we are in the famous 18-year property cycle, so you can make smarter decisions, not emotional ones. Stay tuned. I want to share with you a short story of Harry, who I met back in 2016. Now, Harry wanted to sell his property upsize, but one of the most important reasons was that he had a 5-year-old boy who he wanted a garden to be able to enjoy his childhood. So he wanted to put the property on the market, but Harry wanted to hold back. Of course, 2016 was the year where we had Brexit and the markets were unstable, and he felt, you know what? Right now is not the right time for me. I'm going to wait for a property boom for me to sell my home. So Harry held back. Well, what happened a few years after? As he was waiting, we got COVID. So Harry was just about to put his property on the market when COVID hit. And then he said, well, actually, this isn't the right time for me either. Waited a couple of years. And then what happened was, of course, we did have a big spike in property prices, but they were mainly for big properties with gardens, which Harry did not have. As months and years goes on, we've had a lot of political turmoil. Inflation has gone through the roof, of course, in recent years, and Harry has still not found the right time to sell. Harry still owns this home. The challenge is that his son is now going off to university, and one of the main reasons he wanted to sell the property is no longer there, which is of course having the garden, having those amazing memories with his son. The point here is you cannot time the market, and whether there's a property boom or a property bust, you need to look at your numbers and whether it makes sense to you rather than looking at where the market's going. So let's break down the numbers as to spring this year. The UK asking price has just hit £375,131, a new time high. That's a monthly jump of 1.1% and over 2,800 more than the previous record. And spring is typically a great time for sellers. But this year, it's not only prices that are climbing, it's also the number of properties hitting the market too. More options for buyers doesn't necessarily mean good news for sellers. And despite record house prices, right now we're seeing signs of the strongest buyer's market since before COVID. And why is that? Well, there's different factors to this, but firstly it is the number of stock on the market. We're seeing the highest number of stock since over a decade. Buyer demand is up by 5% compared to last year, and listing levels are up by 4%. More importantly, sellers are now pricing realistically. As we can see from this report, whilst we are seeing record asking prices, the reality is the real price of properties going on to sell is far below that asking prices. The market does shift very quickly, so make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a thing. So let me give you an example. There was a big percentage of sellers last year that were landlords. In fact, at some point it was 25% of listings up for sale were ex-rented properties. What I'm seeing with landlords now is a real motivation for those who want to exit the property in pricing realistically. Are they giving the property away? No, not necessarily. And we're going to look into as well as to those property prices. Let's talk about interest rates. The Bank of England recently dropped their base rate to 4.25%. And this isn't a huge cut, but it is symbolically important. In fact, just after this, we have seen lenders drop their rates to an average of around about 4.5%. Of course, this is much better than the 6% we saw during the mini budget chaos. However, affordability isn't fixed overnight. Lenders are still stress testing at higher thresholds as they were before, meaning that even though rates are going down, those borrowers can't borrow as much as they did before. We are seeing an easing, but not flood of borrowing at the moment. And when it comes to buy-to-let mortgages, we're still seeing that averaging out around 5%. Of course, there's going to be a difference. You're going to be buying a buy-to-let property in your personal name, which is almost like financial suicide, or you're buying it in a limited company. It's interesting to see that whilst they do hover around about 5%, if you're paying a big product fee, like 5% of the property value of the loan, then we can see that that comes down to around about 3.5%. But who would want to pay 5% fee? And if we look at this on a £200,000 property, you're paying 10 grand on a product fee alone to be able to secure that 3.5% mortgage rate. And that's on top of a 5%, 7% stamp duty, which of course we can thank the new government who's come in for those second homes. And zooming into the regions, not all areas are created equal. If we look at Northern Ireland, leading the way at 8.1% annual growth, followed by Wales and Scotland. When we look at the capital, well, London is flattened with some dips. That doesn't surprise me. That's been pretty much the story over the course of the last decade, which is dipping and spiking ever so slightly. Is that going to last forever? Well, if you ever wanted to own a property in the capital, or perhaps expand your property portfolio as an investor, this may be your window of opportunity. And if you're a buyer or seller in the current property market, leave me a comment below what's the experience you're having right now. And let's look at the bigger picture. According to the 18-year property cycle popularized by Fred Harrison and discussed in depth by a lot of property investors across the country, we can see that property moves in 4 phases. Number 1, recovery. Number 2, mid-cycle dip, boom, and correction. COVID completely distorted the cycle, but many analysts believe that we are now in the late mid-cycle dip, coming off of what's called a silent crash. And what does that mean? Well, in the last 18 months, property prices haven't crashed, in nominal terms at least, but in real terms, it has dropped by 15%. According to the cycle, the next phase would be a boom, peaking around about 26 to 27, followed by a correction. And according to this cycle and historical trends, as a buyer, should you be rushing to buy before this boom? Well, what we have seen is properties being resilient. Now, I don't have any specific data right now that tells me that we're going to go into any boom anytime soon. But if you are a buyer right now, and depending on your situation, what we can see is a lot of factors that makes right now a good environment to buy. There's more stock available. Sellers are more realistic on prices. Interest rates are better, certainly better than that 6% that we saw. And the reality is that it's spring, and this is the time where most people are looking out to see properties. You can see properties during the evening after work. I've been speaking to a lot of buyers, and I tell you, the amount of first-time buyers coming into the market I haven't seen for a while, and that happened immediately after the Bank of England announced that rate cut. And if you're an investor looking to expand your portfolio here in the capital, there's a strong case for you to purchase and secure properties for prices that you perhaps couldn't do before, with those buy-to-let landlords who are exiting the market, or perhaps those upsizers who now say, right now, the numbers work for us to upsize. And also there's an argument to say in regions where property prices are increasing more than in the south. So is this a boom, a buyer's market, or something in between? The reality is it's complicated. Yes, prices are high, and yet behind the scenes, buyers are securing slightly lower prices than the asking price, and interest rates have gone down, making things slightly easier for borrowers. Now, of course, if we look at the 18-year property cycle, this suggests that we're on the cusp of a property growth. So, could this be your window of opportunity? Well, the question is, the market is shifting. Are you moving together with it? If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like. It really does motivate me in putting more videos out there.